Welcome to the Redeemed Vision podcast, where we bring sight to the blind and freedom to those enslaved by our pornified culture. Here, we dive into hard but important topics, such as pornography, sexual identity, true freedom, real love, and living marriage well. Go deep with us as we uncover what redeemed vision means for each of us living in the world today. Come to know yourself, the power of redemption through Jesus Christ, the joy of laughter, and how to live in gratitude and wonder. This is Redeemed Vision.
Welcome to another edition of the Redeemed Vision podcast. I'm your host, Steve Pokorny. I'm the founder of Freedom Coaching. This is an outreach of Freedom Coaching. You can find out more about that work at freedom-coaching.net, where we are working with both men and women to break the attraction to pornified images and unchaste behavior permanently. It's an honor to have you here. I have a very delightful guest. I'm excited to share with you that. But before we do that, a little housekeeping for you. I encourage you to check out Catholic Casts. This is a Catholic with one C in the middle. This is a way to help you live your Catholic life to the full, Catholic faith. And there's a collection of over 2 decades of Catholic conferences. They can't be found anywhere else on the internet and in the world, should we say. And I'm sure you're going to be enriched here. And it's a very low cost of $9.95 a month. And you're going to develop more that gift of yourself, that discovery of practical ways to live out the will of God in your life. So visit Catholic Casts, again, one C in the middle there, to get started. Also, I invite you to check out the website for Freedom Coaching if there's interest, if you've got wounds and hurts, especially in this area of sexuality that oftentimes can keep us and hold us back from living the life that we're called to live. This is a place you're going to want to check out. There's something beautiful there for you. We've got our podcasts are listed there, our blog. You can meet the team there, a lot of our coaches. And one other event we haven't posted on there is known as Redeemed Healing. We've begun to do these about once a month. We've done them twice, and they've been phenomenally successful. Just did one most recently in the past week or so. And people are finding a lot of healing, wholeness that are happening there. It's direct prayer. We have some prayer teams there and prayer that goes on there online. And it's also a really good, just a good community that we're growing there. So if you're interested, shoot us a message. I'll get you onto our email list, and then you'll be notified when those events are coming up. And the next one we have coming up is planned for May 10th. Could be moved, but I think it's going to happen there, and it should be happening at 6:45 p.m. Central. So if you're interested, again, if you've got some wounds, got some hurts, especially in these areas of sexuality, of identity, right there, that we're not sure, we've been searching, trying to find answers. There might be some answer here in some of those times of healing there. And then the other piece is, if you're a fan of the work we're doing, or you feel called to support the work and the mission that we're doing here on this podcast, of the Redeemed Vision podcast, the Freedom Coaching, we do have a foundation. It's a nonprofit. It's a way for us to be able to keep our lights on, but even more to spread the work, the good news about this, because a lot of people are looking for answers, healing in these areas. And it's not just a one and done, right? But sometimes, those individual prayer times, such as Redeemed Healing, can be very good. But what we find is we sometimes need to go deeper and have those deeper conversations. So if you're looking for a way to support this, we would be honored to receive your gifts. Yes, the one-time gifts are very helpful. It's the monthly gifts, no matter how small, can go a long way, especially in providing scholarships for those who could not or otherwise afford the work that we need to do, because we like to eat, we like to have houses, but we're not getting rich over here anytime soon, but it's a good thing. And also, please click the bell, subscribe, and share this, because these are very important topics to get out to the world. So since we last met, since we last were together, we have finished up Lent and moved into the holy season of Easter, where death has been trampled by death. There is life here. There's something new here. And for myself, going through this Lent was incredibly healing, challenging, to say the least. And we're part of a Melkite community here in San Antonio. I'm Ruthenian Byzantine. And from this here, if you do all the liturgies, there's 16 separate individual liturgies. And as our priest likes to say, on Easter, Jesus is risen and he's dead. And so from that here, I celebrated 13 of those, or 11 of those with our community. 13 we were able to do of those liturgies. In the meantime, I also played Judas in a Passion play. That was fun. So I don't always get to play that. I think it's the only time I've gotten to play it. So being able to bring that in there and be able to enter into, if you think through it, all of our sinfulness, we all have betrayed Christ, but there's always mercy. The question is, are we going to open up and receive that mercy? And then getting through Holy Week, we had an Easter vigil, and then promptly at about 12:30 p.m., enjoyed the taste of meat once again, and I was grateful. So with that said, I want to, and you can comment below, what was your experience of the Lenten season and now moving into the Easter season? What are your hopes for this time? What are you hoping to for the Lord to do in you, and what work still needs to be done? You can make those comments below here. Now, with that said, I want to share with you a little bit about our guest here, and the guest's name is Brian Butler. I've known Brian for now quite a few years. We're not the young whippersnappers that we once were, but Brian, he is the executive director. He's the co-founder of Echo Community, formerly known as Dumb Ox Productions, which I want to know more about that. What happened there? This cultivates chastity and authentic masculinity and femininity with teens, young adults, families through the lens of St. John Paul the Great's Theology of the Body. Brian has authored several books and programs, including You, Life, Love, and Theology of the Body, that is put out by Ascension Press, and I highly recommend that. He has produced numerous initiatives as part of the new Evangelization, including the original production of Garden, the musical. Okay, there's so much to talk about here. I'm excited. He's founder of a dynamic retreat for teens and young adults called Echo, and his latest book is called Garden Meditations. He's got a bachelor's degree in communication, holds master's in theology, 20 years plus ministry experience in lots of areas, and he's also a very popular speaker and trainer around the country. That's in fact where I got in touch with Brian several years ago here in San Antonio. He enjoys music, sports, the outdoors, apparently singing because he's a musician, and making musicals, and spending time with his wife, Lisa, and their 4 children, and soon, his first grandchild. Brian Butler, welcome to the Redeemed Vision podcast.
Thanks, Steve. It's great to be with you.
An honor. And by the way, congratulations on finding out your daughter gets married, your grandkids. So what is this transition? What is this like for you, moving from I'm simply a married guy, I have kids, and now I'm graduating into a whole new arena? What's that like for you?
I'm a rookie. I don't know what I'm doing. As a grandpa, I have no idea yet. But I like to think I don't have to know yet, because I get 9 months to figure that out. And so we're very excited. Our daughter Lauren is pregnant with her husband Austin, and we're looking forward to that baby hopefully in November.
Awesome. We will keep that in prayer. I'm thrilled for you, and I have to something I want to share on a very personal level. You came here in San Antonio. I was working in the Archdiocese of San Antonio back then, and you put on a retreat on theology of the body, and there is it was powerful and impactful for me personally. And one of the elements that has stuck with me, and it was a prayer. I don't know if you framed it this way, but this is the way I took it. It said, you pray this prayer, it'll change your life. It was super, super simple, right? And I just want to offer this to all those who are hearing this. And it was the God a desire, my desire is for you, right? And I'm gonna pick on you a little bit on that in just a second. This is something that has been. I don't know if it was right from the very beginning of Freedom Coaching, but it was very close to and I've been doing Freedom Coaching since 2011. Where did that come from? What inspired that beautiful prayer?
Yeah, if I didn't give him credit then, I need to give him credit now. That was not my creation. That was my friend Dave Sloan. Dave is in Atlanta and has been there for a long time, and was in the early years, traveling a lot, early years of popularizing the theology of the body and love and responsibility. He did a lot of stuff with young adults, and he's now married with a few kids and doing well. But that was a prayer that I learned from him. God of desire, my desire is for you. And it is so beautiful because it reminds us that there's something deeper than our broken desires. And John Paul II expresses it in his love and in Theology of the Body, and I'm paraphrasing, right, that you have something deeper, you have a heritage that is deeper than the sinfulness that you have inherited. And so many of us, we think about our desires now as just things that are broken. We think about the sinfulness in the world, our concupiscence, but there's a deeper desire for communion underneath that was once pristine, and that desire that was so pure is still within us, but it's below some of those broken desires. And so it's a prayer that is calling out to God from the depth of our heart, as well as at the same time, like saying that to the Lord, also reminding ourselves of the truth that we sometimes forget. God of desire, my desire is ultimately for you, not for the cheap tricks that are presented to me by the enemy, not for the broken sort of fleeting maybe experiences that I might be attracted to, but ultimately I am attracted to you, Lord, to your sacred heart and to the communion that I was made for.
Oh, Brian, thank you. It's beautiful, and I think one of the things that strikes me most impactfully about that prayer is where we get ourselves into trouble is we settle, right? We settle for less than what we were made for, less than what we truly desire. And I think a lot of people, I think there's fear, right? We're afraid to actually open that space up, open that hurt up and say, this thing, whatever this attachment, whatever this situation I find myself in, and pain is, C.S. Lewis makes it clear, right? Pain is the megaphone that God uses to get our attention, right? And many times, instead of actually trying to actually listen to what's going on there, we stuff it. We run from it. We hide, right? We don't go there. But if we don't open that up, we're going to miss a beautiful opportunity to actually perhaps find what we're really looking for. So that prayer to me has been such a reminder, right? Don't settle. There's something more here. There's something way more. And even it's bittersweet, in fact, because it's if we're made for all of these desires to be ultimately fulfilled in heaven, right? If that's the ultimate fulfillment, then there's going to be a little sadness here on this planet when we find like that thing I went to attain. I don't know, let's say with sports, right? We get into the playoffs with our team and we're so excited. They get, we'll pick football. They get to the Super Bowl and they win the Super Bowl. And then what? Next year? I guess so. But like it's oftentimes the pursuit of that, right? So may God move our hearts to fall in love with the pursuit of his deepest desire for us and keep that hope alive in that. It's beautiful. So thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. One of the scriptures tied to that's been important for me over the years is Psalm 37, verse 4, which says, make the Lord your only joy and he will give you the desires of your heart. And for such a long time, I thought that was a deal that God had, which was if I scratch God's back, then he'll scratch mine, an if-then clause. But that's a contract, number one. And number two, not only is it a covenant that he wants with us, not a contract, but the whole idea is that our deepest desires are not for the things of this world. So Lord, if I do this for you, then you do this for me here. But ultimately, I believe that psalm is make the Lord your only joy and he will give you himself, who is the deepest desire of our hearts.
Yeah, and I think this is a critically important conversation, especially as we're going to delve into, especially I want to help a lot of parents here. That's part of the conversation here, the only conversation, helping our kids navigate through the world in which we live, which in many cases has gone pornified, right? And this whole notion, because what's held out in a lot of our culture is that this thing is going to make you happy. If I have this relationship, then I'm going to find fulfillment in life. And it's when we find those things, if they're not tethered to the eternal desire, that's where disappointment sets in. And that can be really brutal, especially if everything we've come to believe, everything we've been watching or seeing or been trained to pursue, that thing is supposed to be it, and it's not. Utter just tragedy, right? And we see this especially with especially teenagers who are very much caught into emotivism in many cases, pursuing their emotions, right? So we'll get into that. I want to save that. So it's a little taste going forward. But I want to go back, if you'll permit me here, right? I want to go way back, right? You're not that old, but we're going back a little bit here, Brian. All right. I want to go back to, if you're willing, go back to your childhood a little bit, right? Because that helps oftentimes set the scene for where a trajectory of a person's life is going. What was life like growing up in your home?
Yeah, life was great. I'm the oldest of 5 children, and my parents are not just good people, they're very, very holy people. And they prayed a lot, and they invited me into a relationship, a personal relationship with Jesus. And they taught me the faith, and they gave me, good opportunities for education and formation over the years. And, we certainly didn't have a perfect family, and there are certainly, wounds and scars that, I kind of got along the way. But it was a great childhood. I lived out in a rural area where I was able to run and play and flex my masculine muscles, so to speak, against nature and the things out in the woods, which was a beautiful experience for me. And I think a very freeing experience, tethering me. You're using the word tethering me to the earth in a very healthy way, to experience the beauty of creation. And really, my dad did help me through that experience, I think, to become someone who practiced a sacramental vision of the world, of being able to see God behind every rock and tree and fish and bird, that God is the giver of all these beautiful gifts. If we have eyes to see through these things, to see him giving them to us. And that really interestingly prepared me, I think, for the grandest sort of revelation of that, which I didn't discover until later. But that was to really see God's giftedness and generosity through the sacramentality of the body, through the beauty of the human person. God being revealed through capital B beauty, being revealed through the lowercase b beauty of man and woman. And so I'm super grateful for my parents and for my upbringing, and have a lot to thank God for the anchoring that I got in those early years that have helped me, as I've grown up and done ministry, and obviously now been married 23 years with my wife and my 4 children, and now a grandchild on the way. So it was a gift.
That is wonderful. That's beautiful. And you mentioned something really important that I'd like to tap in on. Okay. Actually 2 points you made. You said our family wasn't perfect. It was dysfunctional on some levels. I like to say the term dysfunctional family is redundant. Okay. You look at the Holy Family, right? 2 out of 3 ain't bad. Anything goes wrong, like Joseph, right? But he's so surrounded by love there, right? Like love with a capital L, incarnate love, and then the most perfect woman ever, right? It's hard to not have that rub off on us, right? And just as a hint moving forward in our conversation as we develop this, right, especially to parents, right, one of the key phrases I like to teach when I'm working with clients is, tell me about the 5 people you hang around with most, and I'll tell you who you are, right? Pay attention to who your kids hang out with, right? You obviously communing in nature, there's some healthy friendships there, you're flexing those masculine muscles, but also there's dysfunction that goes on here. It's the mess of a family. Nobody has it right. Things, and nobody has it completely right, right? We're doing the best we can, and maybe we cling to grace on that, right? So, and you added so that's the first thing. Second thing that you mentioned was there were some wounds that came up, right? And I like to say that it's oftentimes from our woundedness. If we allow God in this, those wounds can be redeemed, and then can lead us especially to the work that God calls us to do. So if you're willing to go there, Can you talk about some of those wounds and how like maybe looking back, hindsight being 2020, how they influenced you getting into the work that you do currently?
Yeah, I think maybe some of your listeners might be familiar with the little vision of maybe 3 different ways that we often experience an invitation to see our own sexuality and experience it. And one is the expression is through repression, where we kind of stuff away our desires, we pretend that they're not there, stuff them under the rug. And in that space, we learn through an implied sort of idea, which comes from the silence, is that there's something wrong with our sexuality. There's something not good here. There's something to be feared. There's something dark. The mystery is not a good mystery. It's a bad mystery that's something there. And then the other way, that's maybe the opposite pole, is often referred to as indulgence, which is doing whatever you want, whenever you want, exploring your desires all the way to their hilt to see what happens. And what's connected to that is a relativistic sort of look at our desires and our world, and a pursuit of pleasure in a particular way, as maybe being glorified, that pursuit of pleasure being glorified above other things, and maybe an abuse of our freedom that starts to be at play. But the third way is that way of redemption, of being invited to recognize the good and the bad and all the difficulty between these things, and handing them all over to the Lord for us to be redeemed. And so of those 3 sort of ways, I think that I did experience some wounds at the hand of repression, and of not fully being able to articulate and explore in an open and honest, beautiful, holistic way the goodness of man and woman and their bodies, and our call to communion as God intended it from the beginning. And I think that my parents and some of the people that they hung out with, couldn't give what they didn't have, which I think is true for so many of our families and our parents from the past. And so rather than looking back, with anger on what we didn't receive, or on what things that happened to us, we're recording this on the eve, basically a couple days before Divine Mercy Sunday, and it's a great opportunity to recognize that the Lord's mercy has preserved us in so many different ways and poured into those wounds in different ways, and there's been great life that's come from the conversations that I've been able to have with my own parents over the years since I grew up as a child, healing certain things in them and in me, and thank God, in a certain way, curbing some of those intergenerational sort of things and not letting them pass on the same way. Not that, there won't be wounds in my own family, because on this side of the fall, on this side of heaven, which is we're squeezed between these 2 places, we are going to make mistakes, and we're going to wound each other, even when we have the best of intentions. But the Lord's mercy is there for us to receive and to pour out onto our family members. And that's been a great gift of recognizing, my family is great and awesome. It wasn't perfect, but the victory is actually what dominates when I open up all of those spaces of hurt to the Lord's mercy.
Oh, thank you. That is, it's healing. And especially it's going to be healing for others who hear this. And I want to just articulate, for those who are hearing this and watching this, our wounds don't just go away. We must deal with them, right? And especially, I think, as we've experienced, as we're seeing from now generations, the brokenness of the family in very palpable ways, stemming from maybe divorce, or experiencing pornography coming in, and now especially moving into the heavy wounds in some cases of same-sex attraction, or even body dysmorphia, and feeling not comfortable in one's own body, right? A lot of these things are can be devastating to receiving one's own identity and then living from a healthy sense of identity, right? And I think your experience here, right? Obviously, speaking in general terms, but the message is conveyed here. We don't glorify the sin, but we need to talk about and be real about these things. The idea that is a hallmark of the work that we're doing here, that nothing's wasted, everything's redeemable, and especially, and Brian, you said that correctly, right? We're very near to, whether you're hearing this before or after Divine Mercy Sunday, that mercy is always eligible for us to receive. It's always present for us on there. But you can't receive mercy unless you know that you actually need that mercy, right? It's like going to the Pharisees are like, we don't need a doctor. You sure about that? Right? So the question is, where are your wounds? How and are you willing to get real and be raw with those, and then go to the one who can actually heal them, right? And that's a tough process sometimes, because the human heart is very challenging there, right? So everything we're talking about, Brian, right? We're talking through the lens of theology of the body, and I like to say, if the world talks about how we have to be careful so we don't get an STD or an STI, or you're going to get that infection or disease and you get there. Well, I like to say on the reverse of that, there's kind of an infection or disease. We get bitten by this theology of the body bug, and our life is never the same. Okay, and it happened, right? It happened to me, it happened to you. So when did you get bit, right? When did that mosquito of love, shall we say, come in and infect your life? And what was that experience of coming into contact with it? How did that begin to shape your worldview from where you were before?
Yeah, I discovered the Theology of the Body as an outside reading project when I was doing my master's program down here at Notre Dame Seminary in New Orleans, a lay program. And, I only understood a tenth of it when I first started reading it, John Paul's audiences. But the tenth that I did understand started to really impact and challenge some of those worldviews that I was just mentioning, that were coming out of a space of repression, of unearthing some of my discomfort, my even inability to even talk about the word sexuality or the word sex, or to speak the name of body parts or things like that, was, okay, these are hallmarks of the fact that I have suffered in some way here. And it started to bring me some real liberation and some real freedom, and to place the gift of reverence upon my tongue for the goodness of the human person in and through the male and female body. And it was also touching. I was already married for a couple of years at that point. This is probably around 2000, 2001. I got married in 99. And so it started touching my wife's, life, and therefore impacting our relationship. And it was something that I was very quickly then starting to share more with other people. And I started reading more and learning more, and really dedicated my life from that point forward to this being the way that I would share the gospel. And it has been a beautiful ride, that's brought a lot of continued fruit in my own life and in a lot of people's lives that I've been able to share it with.
It's beautiful. Thank you. And thank you for saying yes there, right? The grace, and it's grown so much so that and at some point you established an organization known as Dumb Ox Productions, okay, which sounds ridiculous if you don't know what the heck you're talking about. Why do you want to talk about oxes and who are dumb? Don't you talk about donkeys who are dumb? That's a side note, right? So what was that all about? What was establishment? What does dumb ox even mean for the audience who are not unaware of that language? And what inspired you to start that?
So I was volunteering as a youth minister with a number of other people at our parish, and a good friend that I'd grown up with, one of my best friends. He and I were this dynamic duo. We started doing more and more of this good youth ministry, and I started being asked to do more of it at other parishes and other retreats around the region. And eventually started writing a little book together, and then start saying, well, who's going to publish this book? And we come up with the name of a company that we're going to start called Dumb Ox Productions, which was named after St. Thomas Aquinas, who was nicknamed by his friends the Dumb Ox. Now, Thomas lived in the 1200s. He was a huge man, but he was very quiet. And so they nicknamed him the Dumb Ox, meaning that he was large and silent, but he was very pure of heart and very faithful in following God's call in his life. And those are things we wanted to foster in young people that we worked with. And so we took this name on affectionately and playfully, because it's a teachable moment. When somebody says, what is that? Well, when someone asks a question, then you can give an answer, and you can start to teach them something. And so that was the name for many years. And then we became Dumb Ox Ministries, because people were confused about the fact that we weren't actually a production company. We were a nonprofit organization. And then over the years, as we grew, that got a little bit tiresome to continue to have the conversation. Oh, so you're Thomistic, so you're teaching well, now we're really more John Pauline. We teach more of St. John Paul II's message of the theology of the body. And now that elevator doors are closing, I was not able to share things as quickly and succinctly. So we founded a retreat in 2010 called Echo. And that comes straight out of John Paul II's teachings, where he says in TOB 19, section 2, that we have a distant echo in our hearts of original innocence, this beautiful, pure call that God had given to men and women to love one another and to love him, that we still have a distant echo of that in our hearts. And through Christ, we can start to live that out more faithfully. And so that became our most powerful outreach that we've had. We've done it all over the world, and it's been a great gift, these Echo retreats. And eventually people would say as they were leaving, I can't wait to get back to this Echo community. I can't wait to, and so we really received that name ultimately from people that were experiencing redemption with us. And so this past year, we became Echo Community.
That's beautiful. It's beautiful. And I want to highlight again, like this cannot be overstated. This is one of the most powerful things in theology of the body, because especially if we have tasted the forbidden fruit, right? And in many cases, like this is how temptation works, right? We're told on the front end from the evil one, you need this, you can't go without this, just kind of go on Tinder or blah, 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 whatever. The sin happens, the breaking of relationship happens, and then we are condemned, supposedly, on the other side. You're not enough, you'll never be loved, you're rejected, your life is over. And that's the voice of shame, right? Well, here's the deal. Grace, my brothers and sisters, is much deeper than the heritage of shame that's been given to us. There's a much deeper reality underneath there that doesn't just live under there and then we're like dunghills covered in crap, to reverse what Martin Luther would say. No, this heritage, if we'll tap into it and we allow redemption to come in there, can actually obliterate shame. Just like 1 John 4:18 says, perfect love casts out all fear. We can add, cast out all shame. Oh, it's so beautiful. So the fact that you, Brian, are tapping into this deep, deep desire for all of us and helping people to get in touch with the deeper heritage of our hearts, this is so important, critically important, right? So with all of this, right, I think one of the things that is one of the controversies, I don't know if controversies is the right way, but responses that some people who have against theology of the body, right, who may not understand the theology of the body, is we have this biblical insight. It's great and everything. Yeah, you're talking about sexuality all there, but I really don't get it, right? And one of the things I think that you're hitting on here is this process needs to move from the head to the heart, right? So, and again, we do need both. We do need to be educated here, but something does have to move us here, and it has to do especially. Well, I'll let you share on that. What is that? What's been your experience with, especially working with teens, right? Of moving that intellectual formation, where especially St. Thomas very much focusing on the moral life and the intellectual life, and there certainly is a place for that, and that is locked and rooted in Catholic tradition. But applying this theology of the body for those who may not be aware, and this is going especially to, I want parents especially to really perk up and hear this, because this is how we're going to be able to speak this deeper truth, the echo, to our culture, when so many other things in our culture are making a whole lot of noise. So how advice is apparently, A, how does theology of the body make that real? And B, how recommendation to parents in communicating that to their children?
Yeah, I think that the life of discipleship and the life of growth in virtue is messy. And that means that we're going to make mistakes as we strive to get better, right? The only way to become a really great baseball hitter is to swing the bat and hit, so many times that if you were to look at your percentages, you're missing the ball hundreds and hundreds of times. But that's in the process of learning how to hit it well. It's a part of the process, is to get in the cage and start swinging the bat at pitches that you're really not quite ready to hit. And over time, you get more and more accustomed to, the way that ball comes and your own muscle memory to be able to swing the bat and to connect and have it start to move in a direction of goodness. And the Catechism says the more that one does what is good, the freer one becomes. What does that imply? That whenever you start moving more intentionally toward that goodness, there's not as much goodness as there is if you've practiced it for a while. And so the life of virtue is a movement from disintegration to integration, a movement from division into wholeness. And if you have an image that's shattered, then it's going to take a lot of time to not only pick up the pieces, but get good at putting them back together and being able to do it more coherently and more quickly, more easily, more with joy. And so as parents, we need to be able to facilitate that process with our kids, that they learn to grow and to become more and more whole through not being afraid to take those steps forward and to swing the bat and to sometimes miss. And what's our response? Every time our kid misses, are we shaming them for the fact that they missed the ball? Or are we actually encouraging them to get back up to the plate, follow your training, keep on practicing, and you're going to get better? Is there a safety net, so to speak, of our love that is actually encouraging them to grow in those virtues? And when it comes to sexuality, there's going to be a lot of missteps in our own articulation, the words that we say, the jokes that we laugh at, the things that we click on, the things that we see on television, even that we weren't trying to see, but they're there in commercials or part of a movie I didn't see coming up. There's a lot of messiness there. And if we as parents don't enter into that mess and help our children to learn to navigate it, but if we stuff it away, that becomes a place where darkness starts to fester and children start to try to deal with things alone. And that's a place to get picked off. It's a place to get filled with a lot of lies. On the other side, if I just start to do whatever I want, whenever I want, and as a parent, I don't give them healthy parameters, I don't actually challenge them, I don't actually tell them no, I don't actually give them a space that's safe to play in, so to speak, I just don't make any fences, then that's not a healthy place either. I wanted to mention toward the end of the second movement of St. John Paul II's Theology of the Body, there's an appendix at the end of the second part. And I'm guessing, Steve, that you've done a lot of reading on this and maybe even done some things in podcasts, about it. I hope that if you haven't, you will. But this appendix is on the ethos of the body in art and media. And those three addresses that John Paul gives there, or four, 60 to 63, where he starts to talk about this movement from simply an intellectual into the subjective experience of the body. And towards the just about a page in, he actually says, the whole sphere of aesthetic experiences lies at the same time within the realm of the ethos of the body. It's therefore quite right also to think here about the necessity of creating a climate favorable to purity. And then it goes on from there. Parents need to strive to create a climate that is favorable to purity. If you've ever strived to create a climate of anything, you know that there's a lot of work that has to go into that. And as parents, we have to go ahead of our children to create a climate of goodness that they can grow in, but recognizing that there's going to be some mess along the way.
So there's so much here. So let's see if we can unpack it. And I definitely follow-up questions are rattling through my head here. Parents, do you hear this? Fathers and mothers, do you hear this clearly, right? First and foremost is this environment it's a shame-free environment. Shame is where we are told we are not good as a human being. It's attacking directly our identity, right? And in no way know how to shame someone, especially our children, does not help with the healing process. It does not help with them, with our growth. And I love that phrase, Brian. I want to use this more, like this safety net of love. We know you're going to make mistakes. And think about how do we learn any subject, right? If we give permission for them to fail, in a sense, like you're going to not get these math equations right. Or, I mean, I love the baseball analogy. I'm a baseball fan, so we can talk about that offline, right, too. But with this, allow them to get in the cage, like allow them to actually step into the cage, give them a bat, right? Is there some instruction that has to go with that? Yes, do not hit your sister with this. It's not going to be good for you or them or your sister, okay? So that's where the healthy boundaries come in. But like, it's okay if everything's not okay. It's okay if in this attempt to express love, right? And we do want to have those conversations, continual conversations about what is love and what does that love look like? And hopefully we are modeling in our own marriages, or maybe, God forbid, there's been a broken marriage. Maybe we are participating in a divorce. But again, I've experienced this wound, but I'm striving to do what is second best there, right? and God's going to meet us there. All of this requires then we have to be real and open and honest about our own wounds, right? The two things Jesus can always work with is humility and honesty. Humility, acknowledging who I am in the sight of God. Honesty is just being raw. I don't have it all together, but Jesus, I'm bringing this to you. And guess what? We believe that he's going to work through that slowly, but surely he's going to work through that, right? So you brought up, so along there, so you have that. It's a careful balance there. Kids need boundaries. They flourish in boundaries. They got to know where that is. The game can't be played. Baseball can't be played if we don't know where the foul lines are. But within those basic parameters, there's a lot of freedom there. And certainly, are you going to fall down and skin your knee? Yeah. Right? Is it going to hurt a little bit? Yeah, it is. But guess what? There's mercy, and we're going to meet you here, and there'll be snow cones after the game. So don't worry, okay? But sticking with the analogy. But then from here, right, you mentioned an important word, and it opens up to another important word. And I want to make sure we get our terms correctly, and I want to offer you, Brian, to define this. You mentioned a culture of purity, okay? What is that? And then one that flows from that is that of chastity, right? What are these all about?
Yeah, so it's interesting. He actually doesn't say culture of purity, just to go specifically to the words. What he says is the necessity of creating a climate favorable to purity. In other words, that means that I'm setting the table and trying to give the tools and trying to give an environment that can make it easier to pursue things in a pure way, to love in a pure way. That doesn't mean that I set a perfectly pure environment and nothing unstained can enter it. And that's, I think, sometimes what is a difficult thing for a child. If a parent unwittingly tries to set a perfectly clean tablecloth and say, now we need to keep this completely clean and you can't touch it. I can't even really be very human now at the table, can I? And now so it's that balance of being able to say, no, I want to give you space and the tools to cultivate things in a pure way, a climate favorable to purity, and yet being willing to wash that tablecloth, when things get on it, and not shaming somebody over it, and being willing to help them through that process. And so purity, right? Purity of heart is expressed in and through our actions, and in and through our words, and in through our glances, and in through the way that we touch, the way that we hug, the way that we dance, the way that we, all these things that we do in and through the body is a part of our purity. And chastity is a richer word that expresses the fullness of doing that in a way that is more positive, John Paul II says, than it is negative. It's about that successful integration of sexuality within the person, is the way that the Catechism talks about it. And so it's learning how to be able to say yes to love in and through the body according to God's design, in a beautiful, loving, pure way.
Beautiful. And I would simply add to that, well expressed, is in any of these conversations you're having with your kids, which are going to be continual conversations, come back to what is love. It always must get there. It's not based on mere technique or how far is too far. How far can I go with her before it's a sin? You're asking the wrong questions. What is love? What does that mean? And as the church makes it very clear, it's making that sincere gift of self. So in these little actions, that's why things that have seemingly nothing to do with sexuality, right? Taking out the trash, or allowing my sibling to go first and getting a bowl of pasta at I don't know, when you're out to eat, or at a meal at home, right? It's allowing that. I want to make that sincere gift of self. And when those emotions become eroticized, because there's a background that what was it? The culture of purity, or the environment of purity. Thank you. I'm getting my own language corrected here, right? Then it's not this conversation about the ins and outs of chastity is not coming out of left field. There's a context, a much broader context. That environment has been set so that we can now play within that field there, right? And hopefully, even though there's going to be some skin knees sometimes, right? There's going to be the field of dreams that's going to be set up there. Right? I'm loving this analogy we're running with. This is good here. So I want to move this conversation to what has been near and dear to my heart and in the work we do at Freedom Coaching, right? Freedom is in the name. In our own name, right? Freedom Coaching, right? And as again, Redeemed Vision Podcast is an outreach of that. And because we live in the septic tank, we're swimming in it, right? This drenched in a pornified view of the body that chooses to view human persons and treat them as mere objects. And we're being programmed by that and educated by that, right? So what have you seen, if you can try to be I want to get precise. Here we get to the nuggets really for our parents, right? What have you seen has been helpful in guiding, especially young people, from being attached to pornography and living in genuine internal freedom?
Yeah, so going with continuing to put these things together, creating a climate that's favorable to purity. John Paul is not saying, this whole section does talk a lot about pornography in these 3 or 4 addresses here, but he starts off by talking about creating a climate favorable to purity. In other words, he's not talking about, he doesn't start off by saying what you're not supposed to do. He starts off by talking about the things you are supposed to do, the good things. And that is at the heart of what I have seen. And honestly, it surprised me a little bit, which is that we've had the greatest success with, small groups and experiences that we're doing, not by signing up for the No More Porn Club, but actually signing up for the good brotherhood club, so to speak, the good sisterhood club. It's about rallying around good things and unifying around the good and the true things that has actually founded such a great unity that allows people to be vulnerable with each other when they do make mistakes, and allows them to have the conversations, to reject the things that are less than, to reject the counterfeits, to reject the pornography that is ever at our fingertips. And so those smaller band of brothers and band of sisters has been the place of creating those, even more intimate sometimes environments or climates that are favorable to purity, by rallying around the good things, by being able to celebrate our victories, by studying scripture, by prayer. That's such a huge part of this whole thing, of being able to practice virtue and to offer one another true accountability. There's a level of that in the family, but there's also a level of that in and through healthy peer relationships with brothers and sisters in Christ. And when we celebrate those good things and that becomes our focus, porn is no longer the dominating factor, and I'm no longer afraid of it. It's no longer controlling my consciousness, right? There is a challenge if you say, like, just don't think about pink elephants, right? If that's the whole way you're trying to treat it, then you're pretty quickly not in a space of success. But if you start pursuing the good things, that starts to fill up more of our consciousness, and that becomes the IV drip that actually animates our life, is the Holy Spirit now coming through the good and the true and the beautiful.
Oh, so important. I mean, a phrase, 2 thoughts here, 2 comments. One of the phrases we'll use very frequently in freedom coaching is, where my focus goes, my energy flows. Like, where we're putting our attention is where we're going to bring forth life, right? So the question is, as a father and a mother, where have you been putting your focus for your children about the body, about your attitudes about the body, about the attitudes of romance and human sexuality? Where has the focus been there? Has it been on what the church teaches, okay, of the beautiful vision, especially through this lens of theology of the body, that it's a call to love and to even participate in the divine interior life of the Trinity? Is that the message we're giving it? Or are we giving simply this message of, don't do that, don't touch that, or you're going to get your hand slapped, and I'm not going to love you anymore, right?
Yeah, and maybe I can tag onto that, Steve, which is like a practical here, right? Let's get practical. Is when I'm speaking about things to my children, are the majority of the things that are coming out of my mouth more about what I'm not supposed to look at or what I'm not supposed to do? Or am I actually lifting up the things that are good? Am I starting to affirm the things that are good? Generally speaking, right, I think good psychologists and counselors will tell you, like, you need to try to have, more affirmation of your children than you do have correction of them. Now, some people are like, you don't know my kid. Like, my kid just needs all correction. But really, we have to strive to find the small things that we can affirm. Well, the huge thing to affirm is the essence of who they are being good. But then even the little things that they're doing that are right, even if there are a lot of things they're doing wrong, as often as I can, building that up. And but then specifically around the body, do I actually highlight the goodness and the beauty and say to my son or daughter, like, look at that beautiful young lady, or look at this beautiful, and affirm good things rather than simply saying like, don't look over there, or don't look at that, or turn away here, or isn't that a shame? Those things might need to be said at times because we do need to be able to call a spade a spade. But if there's an inequity there, then that emotional bank account that they're drawing from, if it's mostly the negative comments about the culture and how it's going to hell in a handbasket, then we're actually in a place now that we've got to even out the scales and say, no, the Lord doesn't call us to not sin. That's not his call. His call is to love. So let's talk more and more about the beauty and the goodness of love, and then sprinkle in the warnings that may need to be there.
Okay, there's so much to unpack here. This is great. This is really, really important, right? For first principle, I would say here, our children are going to be attracted to the body anyway. It's going to happen. Why? Because we're called to be attracted to the body, because the body is a sign of love, a sign to love, and it's a sign of God's presence on the planet. We're made for this, right? So, if in nature abhors a vacuum. So if we try to shut that down, based oftentimes, and this is where this takes some being honest and humble. What is our own view of our own body? What is our own view of human sexuality? How have we eaten from the proverbial forbidden fruit and tasted that and felt that wall of shame, right? And I know obviously there's a desire to protect our children because we love our children. That's a good desire, right? But we've got to ask the question, how are we doing that? How are we building up those healthy boundaries? So just one example that I've heard, especially from women who they'll get changed and into a dress or something, and they're like, I don't like that X part of my body. I don't like that thing, and it's a reinforced here. What that does, it also, as your kids are around, they're hearing this, then that part of the body is something to be shameful. It's something bad and dirty, and we want to say no. The body itself is good. Could there be something? I don't know. Maybe a workout's there. Maybe I want to say that very, very tenderly and gently there. That might be part of it, but it's firm regardless of whatever state a person's body in. Can we see the goodness in that body there? That's incredibly important. And Brian, you also said something really important, right? Try this on for size, right? It's the 5-to-1 ratio, and this is especially important for marriage. Okay, 5 affirmations for 1 criticism. Okay. And be really gentle with the 1 criticism, okay? Because when our kids are out of control, when they are misbehaving, if we can open up the engine underneath there, it's not because they hate you and are satanic little beasts and need to be exercised. I mean, not usually, okay? What it is, it's a cry for love. It's a cry for attention. And what is so attractive is when somebody is showing them that attention with those beautiful affirmations. If what's inside again, but remember, you can't give what you don't have. So if we feel here a lot of ugliness, a lot of negativity here, right? That means we've got to check our own hearts at the door. We got to go have a real heart-to-heart conversation with Jesus. I've got my own brokenness, my own woundedness, and maybe I didn't receive this from my own parents, probably, because these wounds go deep. But guess what? There's a Father in heaven who loves us immensely, who wants to speak directly right into those wounds. And there can be healing, wholeness there. And then what happens is we begin to change the generational bloodlines. We're able to stop the accuser from speaking from our bodies, from our words. Instead, we can start speaking these words of love. And again, our words, like the whole phrase, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. And that's just, I reject that line. Because our words can especially affect and impact the way we see ourselves. Words are not everything, right? So take a good hard look at what is the view of yourself? What is the view of the words that we're using here? And are we using more often than not to affirm or to criticize? And this is going to, and if we can learn to shift it, that 5-to-1 ratio there, we're going to see a paradigm shift. We're going to see an attitude shift here. And which we're going to see life begin to come back into the life of our own children. And one more thing that you brought up, Brian, it's important. You're talking about the focus going to the good, the true, and the beautiful, right? This is where, if we want our children ultimately to have a really good defense against the pornified culture, we must go on the offense with what is good, true, and beautiful. fill the space, which also then begs the question, what does your own entertainment look like, Mom? Dad, what kind of movies are you watching? What kind of, like, this calls us out, and we don't like to be called out, but if we're honest about this, we realize, maybe this stuff really is harmful. It needs to go, and there's got to be better things out there. I recommend a show called The Chosen, for example. If you've never heard of it, I recommend it. That's a side note. But any further commentary there, and then we'll move from here.
Yeah, I think, it's been said that what gets rewarded gets repeated. And so rewards are not only the physical rewards, but the rewards of our words. When we say something affirming and that lifts up our son or our daughter, they do want to hear that again. And so they want to try to do those good things, even if they struggle to do it, which they're going to, because they're immature, and they're immature doesn't mean bad. It means not fully mature. And so not putting those undue expectations on them to be more mature than they are at whatever age they are, but just continually giving them the support and the tools that they need to be able to be successful by rewarding, those good things will help them to repeat those good things.
Beautiful. Well said, Brian. And two commentaries that popped to mind is, number one is, if we're not speaking these words of affirmation and all they're hearing the negative, they're going to go to others who are going to speak other things, and things that seem to fill up this hole here. They might not be the things that you want them to hear. That's something to be aware of, not to live in fear. That's where what we're doing here. And by the way, even if we've blown it for the first 10 years, can this be recovered? Yes, it can. We believe in a God of redemption. Start today. Start entering into this today. And then the other piece is, am I going to lose it here? I think I'm probably going to lose it. My idea might come back. I want to. It's gone. Here it goes. Welcome to this is some of this is unscripted as we're working through this, right? So one of the things I want to highlight that you mentioned, you said something about off air. You said something about a litany of chastity. What are you talking about?
Yeah, so we have a little prayer. Our managing director, his name's Adam Fuselier, and for those that are watching, you can actually see this. He wrote a small little prayer called the Litany of Chastity, and it's just a little trifold that is not simply a catechesis on chastity. It's a prayer that is anchoring in the truth and the goodness of who God has made us to be, recognizing that goodness, receiving God's mercy, and some really beautiful things to pray with. And we have distributed over 100,000 of these so far, and it's a free resource that we are sending all over the country. And so if you go to litanyofchastity.com, then you can actually get free copies of this. We're giving it out like candy to priests, specifically, who are really enjoying sharing this in the confessional, that instead of simply absolving the sin, they can also give this to someone to be able to, again, to focus on the true and the good and the beautiful, while asking God to deliver us from evil and to help us to avoid those things. So it's a beautiful prayer. I think the parents and youth ministers and adults would love to share that with their young people, as well as to share it, use it in their own lives.
Oh, it's beautiful. That's fantastic. So again, if you didn't hear this, it's available for free from litanyofchastity.com. To check out that resource, especially priests, religious, please contact them. Please get this into the confessional. And just like for us, if there's a deeper need you're seeing the need of pornography, you're seeing of help for pornography, contact us. We will get you all cards also to use in the confessional, because this is an issue. It's not going away anytime soon. We know that things like AI porn are on the horizon. They're here in many ways. So we have to confront this with what is real and what is true, good, and beautiful. Because again, this is the heart, this is the deeper heritage of our hearts, and we need to enter into that. A couple more topics here, Brian. You are not just an evangelist. Well, an evangelist par excellence. You're creating beauty through musicals. Tell me more about that. How have musicals impacted your life? Well, actually, and I want to ask this: what is your favorite musical of all time, if you had to pick one?
Probably Les Mis. Les Miserables. I'm not. I have to say, I'm not a musical expert. I did do some, theater as I was growing up, and I enjoyed it. But a friend of ours came to us. We had actually produced an album by Greg and Lizzie Boudreau years ago called To the Dust. And that was based upon a popular music album based upon the Theology of the Body. Excuse me. And Joey Martinek came to us and said, what if I was to write a musical around this music that you've already produced? Could I do that? A retelling of the story of Genesis? And I was more than a little skeptical, to be honest with you. But I said, Joey, I mean, write me something. I'm not going to make any promises, but I'd like to see it. So he wrote, first draft. He gave it to me. And a number of us, reviewed it. And I've been meditating upon these things for years, and I wasn't bored. And so I gave him we gave a lot of feedback. And then the next draft that he wrote went from good to incredible. And now we're on draft 14, and we've produced this musical a couple of times already in New Orleans. This coming summer, it'll actually be launching in Atlanta the last weekend of July and the first weekend of August 2023. And it's a super exciting thing. That book that I wrote with Joey is called Garden Meditations, Living from the Beginning and Loving to the End. And it came about because people, after they saw the show, we've had about 5,000 people that saw the show. They wanted more. They're like, can I have the script? I'm like, no, that's not how it works. We won't give you the script for you to read, but I want to have something else. So we wrote this book for people who had seen the play to go deeper in meditating and experiencing good things and praying on these good things. And then people who hadn't could get an introduction to some of the material as well. So it is a beautiful rendition of the story that everybody knows in a way that you've never seen before. The story of Adam and Eve. It is super powerful. I really think we're on the front side of something that I pray will be a gift to the church for a long time. It is a work of art, and it's contributing something beautiful. Rather than simply saying, hey, don't look at that, I want to say, hey, please do look at this, and let it subjectively hit you in your mind and in your heart, and see yourself in the story, and start to really meditate more deeply on these beautiful things.
Okay, so much to unpack here. Briefly, right? You're talking about here a paradigm shift, right? Because I think the church in the past 100 years has been accused of making really bad art. Okay, those who control the space of art win the culture, and culture is defined in a certain sense, or develops. And again, this is a much larger conversation. I had one with Mike Mangione earlier, culture is defined in a certain sense by the stories that are told, right? Think of the Marvel movies, right? We want a story to be told. The deeper heritage of our heart, again, coming back to that, is the original story of how we were created, how we fell, how we were redeemed, and where the heck we're going, which is eternal bliss and union, total union with the Trinity. It's what we're made for, right? With every human being who says yes to that wedding invitation, right? And so for you and your team, right, to bring this into, I haven't even seen this, okay? Like I'm literally saw this 15 minutes before we got on air. I'm like, what is this? I'm excited. I want to check it out, and I want to see if we can get this to Texas. So that's we need to have some conversations. So like to be able to bring this in and to woo people into the story that's written in their hearts. This is built into them. I think you're probably, and again, I'm guessing here, extrapolating maybe a little bit, that you're gonna stir up a lot of emotions. There's gonna be some pain that's gonna be stirred up right here. You may want to have some prayer teams maybe around after that, just a thought, right? But especially as a call, like come embrace, come. We started this conversation through something beautiful tonight. Come learn more. And I think this is especially picks up with the other work that you do, which you're well known for. But I'd love you to share a little piece on these Echo retreats that you do.
Yeah, so they'll double back for 1 second and then go into this. So the Echo retreats, it's a commitment. To come for 3, 4, 5, 6 days to an integrative, immersive experience is a big commitment. And it's so powerful and it's so life-changing. But pretty much almost anybody will go to a 2-hour theater experience, go to a movie or something like that. And that's where Garden steps in as such a beautiful opportunity for people to be able to get a taste and to invite people who maybe won't come to the Theology of the Body lecture, who maybe won't go to a retreat, but they'll go to a play, and it's a play that's familiar enough because it's a story we all know, but it's really unique. It is not the story you know. It's a great work of art. So gardenthemusical.com is where people can get more information about that. Gardenthemusical.com for the Atlanta production, but also if people want licensing information on how to possibly get it to Texas or some other place. But really the Echo retreats, why those are even more life-changing is because there's art as a part of it. There's play as a part of it. There's discussion as a part of it. There's prayer as a part of it. There's learning as a part of it. There's all of these things are part of the integration process. And when you get a chance to live this ethos of the body in a climate that is favorable to purity that John Paul's talking about, we set that space up, and this space to be favorable for purity for 4, 5, 6 days. People come into that and they live and they breathe that way, and then they never want to go back to the way they were before. They want to keep living this way. And we try to then set them up with tools to be able to do that in an ongoing way. And it's an incredible experience that we've been blessed to see God do mighty things through.
You are injecting people with hope, Brian. And I thank you for doing this. We are going to talk offline. I definitely want to know more about this. I'm very intrigued. I'm thinking of a specific space that we may be able to bring this to Texas. So, and let's see what the Holy Spirit does on. Actually, I've got a couple of spaces. We'll talk more about that. So
Echo is coming to Texas, by the way, in the fall.
When?
We're having a retreat for young adults in Dallas, October 13th to the 15th. So
okay,
that'll be our first time doing it in Texas. So
okay. And is who's it specifically for? Age groups? What age?
Yeah, college, post-college, 19 to 35-ish, somewhere in there.
Okay. I just missed out. Okay, darn it. All right, but I'm going to spread the word, and I've got friends in Dallas, so this is very, very exciting for that. But especially for garden, I want to learn more. So this is good. So please check this out. There's lots of good things here, and just one other word before we shift the interview. For those who are fans of the Redeemed Vision podcast, you know what's coming. As a word of encouragement to parents, right? No matter where you've been, no matter what experience of your home life is, and if you've got kids that are out of control, if you got kids that are doing pretty well, there's always room for improvement, and there's always room for even huge moments of redemption that can come in there, right? So open this space up here, get educated on this. And I do also want to pay. Brian, I want to give you one other thank you. Years ago, you had cooperated with, worked with Jason Everett and Kristalina with the Theology of the Body for Youth, and the middle school guide. And I'm just going on a limb and assuming that you were one of the writers of that guide. Is that a true statement? Good. It is one of the best guides I've ever seen for parents of going deep into these issues, to take these, your children better, and to be able to share this with them inappropriately. So thank you again for your yes on that.
I appreciate that, Steve. And to let you know and everybody know, we're actually in the process of revising that program right now with Ascension. And so it should be ready in spring of 2024, a revamped, that actually came out in 2011. And it's incredible how quickly things have shifted in the landscape in the last 12 years. And so we're really excited about being able to come out with a new revised edition of that program that I think is going to be very robust and really help parents and educators to navigate the very difficult issues that middle schoolers and teenagers as well, but specifically in a way that middle schoolers can. So many of them are getting swept away by whatever they're encountering on TikTok or whatever it is that they're doing. And we have to squarely be able to have the mature conversations in a way that's not past where they can handle things, but that also doesn't treat them like they're 8, And so we're really excited about that revision. And I would ask for you and your listeners to pray for us in the process.
And certainly we will. And it'll be called the same program name. Is that correct?
I believe it's going to have the same name. Theology of the Body, for middle school, I think is the name. But Ascension Press, all that information will be coming out, in the coming year.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for saying yes to that, and we certainly will keep that in prayer. It is critically important because so much of the youth are our future, as it's always been said, but critically important, even more for today, given the fact that the assaults against our youth are legion in many cases, not just the number, but of the demonic. And so we must, as those who love our children, who want to raise them in the faith, that we must skill up here, and we must be the ones primarily to educate our children. So as good as Brian is as an evangelist, you are called to step into this role, and do not be afraid to take on this charge. God will meet you with grace, but it doesn't mean you do have to study. So welcome to it. So Mr. Brian Butler, let's change the gears here, and I'd like to introduce you to what we call the 12. Okay, these are just 12 kind of fluffy questions, that allow our audience to get to know you a little bit more. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. Number 1, peanut butter, creamy or crunchy?
Crunchy.
2, if you could be any Star Wars character, who would you be?
Luke Skywalker.
Of course. What? Number 3, what is your desert island food?
Oh, I'm going to go with a really fresh pineapple.
Good. Yeah. I eat too much pineapple. My mouth gets kind of funky. So I can go maybe a quarter pineapple and I'm done. So I'm in trouble.
Fair enough.
All the best to you. Number 4, beer or wine?
I will probably go with a good red wine. Yeah.
Okay. All right. And I'm going to follow up. What kind of red wine?
I like probably Castle Rock Merlot would be the one that comes to mind. I do also like Riesling, which is not a red. That's a white. So those are my 2 go-tos.
Good. Excellent. Good. Number 5, growing up, what was your most memorable Christmas gift?
Definitely. Actually, I think I wrote this story in the Garden Meditations book, but my dad one year got out Christmas Eve in 20-degree weather with a post hole digger and dug me holes where he put in a field goal in my backyard. And I was able to play football. I was a soccer player, but a football player.
Wow.
And I wanted to be a field goal kicker. And he made me my own field goal in the backyard that I was able to. It was incredible.
Okay, that's committed. How many acres, or how big was your backyard?
Well, it was, we were out in the country, so I think it was maybe 3 or 4 acres that we
That
have.
is very, very cool. God bless Dad on that. That's wow.
It was awesome.
Wonderful. That is awesome. Number 6, what is your bucket list city or country?
Well, I'll go with country. I'll go with probably the Swiss Alps on the beauty factor. I guess right alongside that would be to go to Poland and be able to go in and through John Paul II's sort of life. I'm not doing the one answer here. And then 3rd, I have never been to the Holy Land. So those are the three answers you're getting from on that.
Okay, I have not gone to the Holy Land either, and Poland is amazing except for the train system. Okay, you don't know Polish, you miss.
I'll skip that.
Yeah, if you don't know what the word is, there's like one. The last time I was there, one sign at the train tracks. If you miss it, you are done. So,
gotcha.
But anyway, it's a beautiful place, and I highly recommend it. 7, if you could have one superpower, what would it be?
To see perfectly purely.
Redeemed vision. Beautiful.
Yes.
Great. There it is. There it is. You're speaking my language, buddy. 8, if you have you seen The Chosen?
Yes.
Okay. Follow-up question. Impossible question. What's your favorite episode?
I'll just go with the one that comes to mind right now. I really loved the moment where Jesus actually gives the Sermon on the Mount with Matthew when he's rehearsing it, basically, and he's looking down at the camp of his disciples as they're heading out to do missionary work, and he's specifically thinking of all the particular parts of his sermon that are for each of them. Of the nature of like how God's word is so personal for each one of us is what was just arresting me in that moment. You're right; it's super hard to pick one above the rest. That's the one that just came to mind that I really loved.
I need to go rewatch that section like that. I now I'm reflecting on that scene. That's well said and well done. Like, God, there's so much there we can unpack. I need to have just a Chosen commentary. I probably need to just do a chosen commentary after every episode.
Yeah.
Let's be honest. Okay. Anyway, number 9. Besides your name and date, what do you want written on your tombstone?
He loved well.
Beautiful. 10. Only one, Brian. If you had to pick one saint, who's your favorite?
I gotta go with St. John Paul II. I know it's so boring to say that my hero would be the one who helped fall communism and helped chart a course for the future of the Catholic Church and helped have us have redeemed vision on the body. But that's the boring saint that I'm going to go.
It's so boring, of course. You're not the only one, but it's always different. It's like the prism of the Gospels. There's 4 Gospels, but depending on where the light hits and what our experience of that light is, it takes on a whole new light and it illuminates other people. And that's beautiful. So number 11, then follow-up. It is a follow-up, but it also stands alone. If you could only pick one, what is your favorite John Paul quote?
Silence in the airwaves here.
No, it's good. It's good.
So hard.
It's percolating.
It's so hard for me to pick one. I am going to go with a concept, which is the fact that reverence is needed in order to be able to approach your spouse in loving them the way that God calls you to love. It's a paraphrase of some stuff that he talks about towards the end of the Theology of the Body. There might not be a great memorable one line there, but it's such a powerful idea that I can't approach my wife to love her without piety, without real reverence of seeing the life of God in her, of seeing her as a tabernacle of the Holy Spirit. And so I'm gonna go with that. I know I have so many of his quotes in my head, but I'm giving you a quote. So there you go. There's my unique.
Well, that's profound. Just one commentary on that, and I think it fits especially with the conversation we had today, right? That chastity, and I think that's one of the things that's what I was going to say, right? Chastity is the power to love. That's really what it is, and the call, like especially if we're a young person, we're wanting to love, or if we are married and we are desiring union with our spouse, we can only come and become more of what we want, going into that God of desire, my desires for you, to go deeper. If we are able to reverence the person, that this person in front of me is not a body, is a somebody who's unique and unrepeatable, and I am able to receive them as the gift that they are, and allow them to receive me as the gift that I am. Oh, we are on holy ground, my brothers and sisters. So, Brian, thank you for illuminating that one. And I have one more. Brian Butler, why be Catholic?
Because Jesus invited me to be that way, and I want to be with him. And the church that he gave us is the way back to his Sacred Heart that is on fire with love for me and for you and for my wife and my kids and my grandchild that I haven't met yet, and all of those in our world. The Catholic Church is the way back to the heavenly home that the Lord, where he's gone. I love the scripture passage in John 14 where he talks about the fact that where I'm going, there are many, I'm going to prepare a place for you. Did you not know that in my Father's house are many dwelling places? And that scripture passage is spoken from the marital sort of understanding in first century Judaism of the fact that the bridegroom would go away right after he was betrothed. He'd go away and he would add on an addition to his father's house for his new bride. And she didn't know when he was going to come back. And so when he came back, it was to take her to himself to now live in that new space. And the church is the bride of Christ, but the church is also the way for each one of us to be able to come back to Christ and to live in that eternal mansion that he's preparing for us.
So beautiful. So beautiful. this is the destiny that we're called to, right? But we're called to not just wait for it sometime in the future, but to begin living it now. So Brian, thank you for all the work you're doing. Thank you for for your saying yes. And all our prayers are with you. And especially I encourage all of you to check out the echocommunity.us, as well as gardenthemusical.com, as well as the litany of chastity.com for that. So much good is here. So my brothers and sisters, especially who are educating your children, please check out the Echo Community. I think there's a whole lot here for you that's going to help to empower you and to help our children to become the saints that they're called to be. So Brian, thank you so much for being here on the Redeemed Vision podcast. I'll talk to you offline in just a bit.
Thanks for your great work, Steve. God bless.
Thank you, brother. And to all of you who have been here, I want to thank you for the opportunity to share the work of Brian Butler. Please check out the work again at echocommunity.us. Check out the work that we're doing at Freedom Coaching. And remember, may everything we do give glory to the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, as it was in the beginning, is now, and ever shall be, world without end. Amen. Remember, nothing is wasted. Everything is redeemable. And until next time, God bless.
The Redeemed Vision podcast is an outreach of Freedom Coaching. To learn more, check out freedom-coaching.net and follow us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and MeWe.